Hill. He didn't contact Diana, but kept in touch with Camilla. From Sinclair Hill's home, the prince's phone calls to a woman were secretly recorded, and the bugged love tapes passed to the press, who naturally assumed that the mystery female was Diana.
I think it must have been a double blow for Diana, because already there had been the Royal Train incident when it was suggested that Diana had spent the night on the Royal Train with Charles. In fact, we now know it was Camilla Parker Bowles. Now, this new blow, she is just a moment away from actually getting married to Prince Charles, and she discovers that he's been making private telephone calls which have been bugged. They're supposed to be to Diana, but in fact, they're to Camilla. Now, she is within weeks of actually getting married to Prince Charles. Charles isn't calling her at home, but he's calling Camilla. Can you imagine what was going on in her mind?
Later, Diana called her wedding day the most emotionally confusing day of my life. Camilla had been in St Paul's Cathedral as Diana and Charles exchanged their wedding vows. For several years, the palace protected the fairy tale.
When the palace deceived the British public and the media about the state of the marriage of Charles and Diana and the fact that Camilla was involved, they always operate at the palace a defensive public relations system, not an offensive one. So they were trying to protect his reputation. And a lot of people were fooled for a long time, myself included. I thought that he's far too noble a person to be unfaithful to his wife and betray his marriage vows. But he said, "Do you expect me to be the first Prince of Wales doesn't have a mistress?"
Leading the guard of honour for the carriage taking the couple to their honeymoon was Camilla's husband, Andrew Parker Bowles. A page at the Queen's coronation, he was now a lieutenant colonel with the Household Cavalry. Interviewed that day, he described Charles as a marvellous leader and a marvellous man. Very few knew that Bowley Hyde Manor, the Parker Bowles' home a few minutes' drive from Highgrove, had been used for trysts between Charles and Camilla. In time, Camilla also made secret visits to Highgrove.
It's important to remember that when she got married, Highgrove was Diana's home. I mean, Kensington Palace was her London base, but Highgrove was home. And on the occasions I visited the house, it was her place. But I think as the marriage deteriorated and she knew that Highgrove was where her husband entertained Camilla Parker Bowles, obviously her views on the place changed, so that by the time she left, she metaphorically and pretty much literally shook the dust of it off her shoes.
Charles had bought Highgrove to be close to Camilla. It's near the Gloucestershire town of Tetbury, with its centuries-old buildings. Despite its quaint charm, Diana never felt at ease in the area. It was too near Camilla and the Beaufort hunt. At this time, Diana didn't ride, and she was suspicious of the hunting set, who might provide opportunities for Charles to see Camilla.
Once when she was having lunch, the hunts sort of came galloping through the garden, the local hunt, the Beaufort, and she was outraged because Prince Charles jumped up and left his lunch to get cold on the table and rushed out to sort of look at them, and she was furious.
Charles also met Camilla at safe houses loaned by friends who encouraged his betrayal of Diana. They were photographed together at one of their secret locations, Glyncellyn House near Brecon, owned by friends in Camilla's circle. In 1986, the Parker Bowles family moved to Middlewick House, again close to Highgrove. Caught out by the press, Charles made a frantic escape hidden under a blanket. He also journeyed to love nests round the country. The locations included Garraby Hall in Yorkshire, home of the Earl and Countess of Halifax; Eaton Hall in Cheshire, home of Anne, Duchess of Westminster; and Northmoor Farm, then the Suffolk home of the Van Cutsums. Florence in Tuscany was a shared passion. They visited a villa bought by King Edward VII for Alice Keppel. Here they loved to paint. The couple visited Turkey in 1989. When these sneak pictures in the press failed to end the affair, Diana took action herself.
Prince Charles really believed that he could manage his love life. He could keep Camilla in one compartment and Diana in the other, and he was appalled when he was invited by Lady Annabel Goldsmith to her house, Ormley Lodge, to go to a birthday party, to discover that Diana, who had also been invited, was actually going to come.
Surprisingly, the Prince of Wales didn't expect the Princess to go, but she did, and I went with both the Prince and Princess of Wales.
And he was appalled at the thought that the two women in his life were actually going to meet. And all his worst nightmares came true. Camilla and Charles had nipped off together. They were having a private conversation downstairs away from the main party.
Within about an hour or so, I heard my voice being shouted from the hallway, and it was the Princess. And she was rather distressed, and she said to me, "Ken, I can't find the Prince of Wales." So I said, "Well, you know, there's not much I can do." Well, you know, why? She says, "Well, you know, I can't see Camilla either." So there was a sort of a rather serious tone that came, expression came across her face. She said, "Will you come and help me find them?"
Finally, Diana cracked. She raced down the stairs. She confronted Camilla and said, "Leave my husband alone." Diana had control of that moment, and I think it must have been a wonderfully triumphant moment for her, because it was the only time during all the time that she was married to Prince Charles that she was ever able to confront Camilla and tell her to keep off her husband.
I think when we were on tour in Egypt, Diana told me about confronting Camilla Parker Bowles at the Goldsmith party. And I mean, it didn't surprise me very much, because I knew the Princess was a pretty feisty lady. And I was quite pleased on her behalf that she was confronting somebody who she felt was a very unwelcome intrusion in her life.
Diana privately nicknamed Camilla the Rottweiler. Camilla called her Barbie, after the doll. Everyone in royal circles knew that Charles and Diana now lived separate lives. Charles played polo every summer, a hobby Diana disliked almost as much as hunting. In 1990, the prince broke his arm in a dangerous fall. Diana was with Charles when he left hospital, but this show was a deliberate smokescreen to conceal the true state of the marriage. They went home to Highgrove together, but Diana soon left its front door for London, and Camilla arrived by the back entrance to nurse the prince. The marriage entered a terminal stage, with Diana and Charles both using Highgrove at different times. Camilla took over every aspect of Charles's private life.
She is a mother to Charles, she's a nanny, she's a nurse, she's a mistress, she's somebody who treats him as a little boy, which I think is what he wants half the time. I think she must be great in bed with him and looks after him in that department exceptionally well. This is a lady who just does everything for the Prince of Wales and doesn't actually ask for that much in return. To be fair, I don't think she's even asked him to marry her.
In June 1992, a biography of Diana revealed her suicide attempts and an eating disorder caused by her anguish over Charles's closeness to Camilla. Her secret cooperation with author Andrew Morton betrayed her husband and the royal family. The couple were scarcely speaking as they performed their last foreign tour in Korea that November. Days later, the Prime Minister, John Major, made this historic announcement.
It is announced from Buckingham Palace that, with regret, the Prince and Princess of Wales have decided to separate.
1993 began badly with Camilla Gate, a bugged, intimate phone call between Charles and Camilla.
I can't bear a Sunday night without you. It's like that programme Stop a Week. I can't stop a week without you.
Charles's advisors encouraged him to tell his version of events to biographer Jonathan Dimbleby. On television, he admitted adultery with Camilla. She was exposed to public censure.
Whenever there's a crisis, the royal family has one rule and one rule only, and that is don't do anything. And when the Camilla Gate tapes were published, when Andrew Morton's book exposing Charles's long affair with Camilla was published, Prince Charles did nothing. He let her take care of affairs for herself. As a result, she was put under house arrest by the British press. She was vilified in public. People threw bread rolls at her. And basically he did nothing to protect her. Nobody was sent in by his team, his Prince Charles's team, to actually make life more easy for her. She had to survive by herself.
Diana also mapped out a route for her own survival. On the night of Charles's televised admission of adultery, she upstaged him by wearing one of her most daring dresses at a charity event. A year later, she bared her soul in a remarkable interview for the programme Panorama. She spoke of her illnesses, her despair, and her feelings of failure as a wife. With calculated revenge, she blamed Camilla.
Do you think Mrs. Parker Bowles was a factor in the breakdown of your marriage?
Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
Famously, Diana said that there were 3 in her marriage, by which I guess she was referring to Camilla Parker Bowles. And it's a fair bet that if there had only been 2 in the marriage, then it would have been easier for those 2 to do what was, after all, their duty constitutionally, which was to stay married. I think that's sometimes forgotten, that fairy tale wedding in St. Paul's in 1981 was the Windsor dynasty's best bet for long-term survival. And the fact that didn't work, for whatever reason, whether it was Camilla Parker Bowles or anything else, is the gravest, most dangerous threat to the long-term future of the dynasty.
Camilla and Andrew Parker Bowles were divorced in early 1995, a few months after Charles's admission of adultery. Andrew had been embarrassed by his longtime friend and fellow army officer. Camilla remained silent.
When Camilla got divorced from Andrew Parker Bowles, the only reason that happened was 100% Prince Charles's fault. It would never have happened if he hadn't humiliated Andrew Parker Bowles by going on television. He admitted that he'd been unfaithful. 3 days later, it was as quick as that, Andrew then said a divorce has to go ahead. In fact, he behaved very well. He became the guilty party. It was very old-fashioned, and he took all the blame, and I think she divorced him. But that would never have happened if the Prince of Wales hadn't made that ridiculous admission to Dimbleby. Not only did it cuckold him in front of everybody, but it also was a fellow brother officer in one of the regiments saying, I have been having an affair with a fellow officer's wife. That is an absolute no-no in the British Army. You do not behave like that.
Andrew, who had retired from the army on a pension, remarried. His second wife, Rose, took Camilla's place at society events, such as Ascot, each summer. The divorce cleared the way for Camilla's second marriage.
Charles, who'd been having this wonderfully illicit affair, which went on for years and years and years, was in the position where he had to make an honest woman out of Camilla. Now, it may be that after all these years they've been together, he was actually tiring of her. And we may see that today that they live in Clarence House, but living separate lives. Who knows? But what I do know is that Charles forced this divorce, and he ended up with Camilla, whether he wanted her or not.
Camilla's children, Tom and Laura, were affected by their mother's affair with Prince Charles. Tom was so embarrassed by other boys' teasing that at one stage he changed his surname to Bowles. He also turned to drugs and was caught out amid unrestrained publicity. Charles had to distance himself and his boys from his lover's son.
One of the great disasters of the Camilla campaign, the campaign to try and make her more acceptable to the British public, was to try and join together the Parker Bowles family and the House of Windsor family, the children of Camilla and the children of Prince Charles. And the spin doctors were trying terribly hard to make this look like one nuclear family. But in fact, it was never going to work. Prince William and Prince Harry are remarkably suspicious of the whole Parker Bowles ethos, and they wanted to maintain their distance.
Parker Bowles is a valuable brand name. Tom, who once sold wax jackets in Harrods, has reinvented himself as a cookery writer. Charles and Camilla's friend Emily Van Cutsem fell out with them over Tom's influence on the young princes. The feud was exposed when her son Edward married Lady Tamara Grosvenor, daughter of the Duke of Westminster.
2 or 3 years previously, the Van Cutsem